Take a look inside your refrigerator. You might find a soda can, some yogurt, day-old pizza, and fruit that traveled halfway across the globe to get there. Your ancestors wouldn't recognize any of it as food. So what were they actually putting in their mouths? The truth would make most people living today deeply uncomfortable. Scientists have uncovered evidence in cave sites around the world, evidence that fundamentally reshapes what we know about our own species. But to grasp it, we need to go back roughly 3 million years. Your earliest relatives were not hunters. They were opportunists feeding on the leftovers of other predators. After a lion took down an antelope on the African savannah, it would consume the choicest portions first: muscle, organ meat, the richest tissue. Then hyenas would move in, grinding through ribs, hide, and smaller bones. By the time early humans arrived at the kill site, almost nothing remained, except the thick leg bones, too dense even for hyena jaws to splinter. That's what our ancestors went after. Their defining meal was bone marrow. Early humans would approach an already stripped carcass, collect the heaviest limb bones, and crack them apart using sharp stone tools known as oldowan flakes. What spilled out was marrow, slick, grayish, loaded with fat. They scooped it out bare-handed and ate it raw. For these early humans, that was a genuine feast. No competing scavenger could access it. The marrow was locked inside dense femurs, and humans had one crucial advantage no other animal possessed: hands capable of gripping a rock with enough force to shatter them. They ate the brains, too. A fractured skull could yield close to a pound of pure fat, the most calorie-dense substance available in the wild. For a being surviving on scraps, a skull was like striking gold. This is why your body still treats fat as something precious. That memory is still encoded in you. Insects were on the menu as well. Termites, grubs, beetles, thick white larvae as long as your thumb. They snapped between the teeth like shellfish. For your deep ancestors, bugs weren't a fallback option. They were a staple. This was daily life for more than 1 million years, season after season, generation after generation. But what came next is harder to stomach. Then came fire. The oldest controlled human fire ever discovered was found inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dating back approximately 1 million years. Fire meant cooking. Flesh roasted over coals, roots buried beneath hot embers, marrow bones left to heat in the flames. Cooking is essentially external digestion. It begins breaking food down before it ever enters your body. Raw meat and raw vegetation force your gut to perform hours of biochemical work. Cooked food arrives already partly dismantled. The body expends less energy processing it and extracts more nutrition per bite. As cooking became routine, researchers believe the human digestive tract gradually contracted. That energy savings was redirected upward into the brain. The human brain makes up just 2% of body weight, but consumes roughly 20% of total caloric output. You simply cannot power that kind of machinery on uncooked leaves and insects. You need calorie-dense, fat-rich, cooked food. Cooking enabled bigger brains, and bigger brains enabled everything that followed. The menu expanded dramatically. By around 300,000 years ago, your ancestors were anatomically close to you and eating nearly anything they could pursue, dig out, or reach. Mammoth, bison, wild horse, and reindeer on open ground, fish and shellfish along rivers and shorelines, wild roots, grains, berries, nuts, and fungi from the terrain, eggs raided from nests, and honey, above all, honey. The Hadza, a hunter-gatherer group in Tanzania who still live by foraging, offer a window into pre-agricultural human diet. Roughly 15% of their total caloric intake comes from wild honey. They scale treacherous trees, endure hundreds of stings, and return repeatedly because nothing else in nature concentrates that many calories in one place. And that same pull lives in you. Sugar. Your brain is engineered for it because for hundreds of thousands of years, sugar did two things simultaneously. It delivered immediate energy and triggered fat storage for later. That stored fat was the margin between survival and death during lean periods. A honeycomb dripping from a branch was the single most calorie-rich thing most of your ancestors ever encountered. That ancient program is still running in you right now. Your body cannot distinguish between wild honey and a gas station donut. The modern food industry identified that ancient signal and built an entire economic model around it. Soft drinks, sweets, breakfast cereals, condiments, even most commercially produced bread, nearly every packaged product on the planet is sugar dressed up in different packaging. That is why you cannot stop reaching for it. Your body is still attempting to stockpile fat against the next famine, except the famine never comes. But sugar wasn't the only craving hardwired into you. Meat ran just as deep. A single mammoth carcass could sustain a group for weeks. One successful hunt replaced countless hours that would otherwise have gone to foraging plant material. The time recovered became time for raising children, refining tools, passing down knowledge, and gathering around fires to tell stories. Every protein craving you experience today echoes that logic. But there is one craving most people still find deeply uncomfortable to acknowledge. At a site in England called Gough's Cave, researchers uncovered human bones dating back roughly 14,700 years, and what those bones revealed was unsettling. The skulls had been methodically worked with stone tools. The facial structures and the base had been carefully detached, leaving the upper cranium shaped, edge by edge, into a vessel. The long bones had been fractured open in the same manner your earliest ancestors cracked antelope femurs for marrow. What made it stranger was this: it wasn't starvation. The same cave held the remains of horses, deer, and other animals. Food was available. A 2017 study mapped the caloric yield of the human body, roughly 125,000 calories. One bison carries 600,000, a mammoth nearly 3 million. Humans were an inefficient food source. Consuming them was a deliberate decision. One forearm bone at Gough's Cave was etched with a geometric pattern after the tissue had been removed. This was not desperation, it was ceremony. And Gough's Cave is not an isolated case. Comparable evidence has surfaced at sites across Germany, France, Spain, and Croatia. Across hundreds of thousands of years in scattered locations, humans were doing this to one another. Not always out of necessity, because at some point it came to mean something. It gets stranger still. Your ancestors didn't restrict themselves to fresh kills. They ate decomposed meat. When a hunt yielded more than a group could finish, they cached the surplus, buried it, stowed it in caves, submerged it in cold streams for days, weeks, sometimes months. When they returned, the flesh was crawling with larvae, saturated with the smell of decay. They consumed it regardless. Some researchers suggest they may have sought it out that way. Rotting meat is already partially broken down by microbial activity, easier to chew, more readily absorbed, and rich in B vitamins produced by the bacteria themselves. Your body still carries that memory too. Every fermented food you enjoy is decay, managed and rendered safe. Cheese, yogurt, sourdough, beer, wine, soy sauce, pickles, all of them are controlled decomposition. Your taste for aged cheese didn't emerge in a European dairy. It was shaped on a savannah 100,000 years ago, eating something far less refined. Every craving you feel today for fat, for salt, for sugar, for whatever is richest within reach is an inheritance. Your body has no awareness of supermarkets or cold storage. Its only directive is this: consume what is calorie-dense, consume what is scarce, consume while the opportunity exists, because tomorrow the landscape might be empty. At 11 at night, when you open the refrigerator without actually being hungry, you are executing a 3 million-year-old subroutine, still scanning, still trying to keep you alive, but the world that subroutine was written for no longer exists. If you dropped a modern person into the world of 50,000 years ago, they would likely be dead within days. You wouldn't know how to locate water. Most of the plant life would be unidentifiable. You wouldn't have the physical conditioning to run down prey, climb for honey, or split a thigh bone for marrow. You would stand in the middle of a landscape full of potential food and starve because you could not read it. But if you transported a human from 50,000 years ago into your kitchen, they would believe they had stepped into the dwelling of something divine. The cold, sweet liquids sealed inside metal, bread made by invisible hands, milk that remained fresh for weeks behind a sealed door, fruit from places no one in their world had ever heard of, food that required no pursuit, no risk, no effort. It would be the most abundant place any human in their entire lineage had ever stood. For 3 million years, every person who ever walked this earth was cold, tired, and hungry. You may be among the first generation in the entire history of this species for whom that is simply not true. And most of us have no real sense of how extraordinary that is.